So, with next panel here, I've got 4 great people to speak about the Women's Euros and the Commonwealth Games, 2 of the big events over the summer. And as we don't have too much time, I'll straight away say get your questions in on the Slido. If you have anything that comes up you want to hear a bit more about, we'll have a few minutes at the end to talk about that. And first of all, we can go through and introduce everyone. So we have David Tippett from Sunset and Vine. You can tell a bit about what you're doing over there at the moment.
We were the host broadcasters for the Commonwealth Games. I think many of you will know that already. And we also work with EMG on the world feed, producing the world feed for UEFA for the Women's Euros.
David Harnett from Time on Television. We were the technical supplier for Sunset and Vine on the Commonwealth Games host facilities, and also for Whisper and BBC on the Women's Euros. Carry on.
Yeah.
Over to Bethan, go ahead.
I'm Bethan, I'm Director of Production at Whisper, and we were lucky enough to produce the Women's Euros for BBC with Dave and working closely with our colleagues at BBC. And the rest of the time just feels like a relentless push on lots of other things.
So you might guess then, I'm from BBC Sport. I'm an executive producer there with a remit kind of specialising on live streaming, and we don't call them niche, but more minor sports coverage there. And I was involved in the Commonwealth Games this summer, as well as looking after some of the women's football and across many, many events. I think it's been a crazy year for all of us, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's Bethan Walsh and Victoria Cotton on the end.
Evans, sorry.
Evans, sorry.
I'm Welsh, but like...
Yeah. And we also have, I think, a quick video from Whisper as a bit of a flavour of what we're talking about.
We're all...
Hopefully...
It's never me that says it.
We'll play shortly.
Change. We've seen a lot of it over the last few years.
On the biggest stage.
If girls are not allowed to play football, then what are we doing?
This is a new era.
What's up, guys?
Come on!
3, 2, 1, let's do this!
This is the story of a main character.
It doesn't matter where you came from.
I want to work with the sport to become more diverse.
Because that is what champions do.
This is sport for the most curious.
Can I tell you something? I'm excited.
This moment changes your life forever.
This is a story of triumph. This is not a story of defeat.
Whoa! Big crash, car upside down. This is barely believable.
Where it's come in the last 10 years is just phenomenal.
Real beauty is having the drive to succeed.
This is NFL End Zone.
The greatest of all time.
This is a battle for the ages. Let's get ready to rumble!
It takes 2 to tango.
Listen to the roar! Lewis Hamilton mugs them both!
One, take 2.
Something beautiful! It's something beautiful!
Smooth, that was really smooth.
Right? I'm good at this.
The segue.
Okay, so as you can see, very exciting summer of sport, all brought to us by these people. So, David Tippett, obviously you were a Sunset and Vine host broadcaster across, we had the Commonwealth Games and the Women's Euros. So, how was it having 2 such huge events, one after the other, I would guess?
Gosh, I think we nearly broke the OB industry in the UK between us all. I mean, it's been a real challenge, I think, in terms of crewing, and we're not alone, I think, in experiencing that. And I suppose that's the I know this is a tech forum, but in terms of the people and the strain on the people, it's been bonkers, and and people have really had to step up, and they've done amazingly. I think that the industry's sort of pulled together and got us through a very challenging summer. Not just got us through it, but just delivered some amazing amazing coverage for a large number of clients and production companies.
Mm-hmm. And well, going to the Women's Euros first, what were with such a strain on people, was it needed to have kind of technological innovations which were needed to be brought in and kind of in terms of remote production and other cloud production and so on to help with that? I don't know if David Hart.
Oh, right, yeah. So we basically, the way we did the Women's Euros is we had two OB units that were sort of smaller RF vehicles that linked in via NEP connectivity, and then they came back to the Ealing Broadcast Centre, and it was a remote offering. So they were leapfrogging each other. It was quite interesting, trying to make the logistics work, because obviously it was right across the UK. So trying to make that work, and they were all remote back to BBC, where the bulk of the production crew were remote cutting all of the feeds and all the sound and VT and edits and everything were there. And it was quite an amazing operation actually, and really sort of that downscaled crew out on site was, you could see that working, really well, and being able to then have a lot more resources in a static place where it's a lot easier for the logistics and also much better for green credentials to not be travelling all those people around.
Yeah, I agree. And it's almost like we almost take remote production a little bit for granted. I don't know, it's like our default where we're going to start. Is it going to work? And there definitely were a few challenges for the Women's Euros, a couple of venues without diverse connectivity, where we had to add in some satellites, some extra challenges for these guys. But actually, one of the things we were talking about is that you forget quite often on a men's major sporting event, the games are shared between BBC ITV. So quite often there's two crews, a little bit of downtime in between. And on this, it did mean the schedule was pretty relentless. And actually, had we not had that central gallery that meant we could do two matches from different locations on the same day, it would have been a lot of people moving around in very short space of time between matches, and probably would have pushed the resources to the limit. So it worked really. Pretty well.
and I guess to echo Tippo's point, the thing that, and I'm sure we've spoken about it before, but the thing that people don't necessarily see as much with remote production is that from a technical perspective, you essentially have double the crew, because you've got your guarantee engineers at both ends, which are the ones that are harder to find, and we have to deliver that at both ends, and it means that you're just looking for such more volume of crew. And whilst we had this crazy summer of sport, our colleagues had to work really, really hard to pull a lot of this out of the bag. And but it was fantastic, and it looked really good.
Yeah, no, we can definitely agree on that. And well, Victoria, with the BBC, again, two huge events, both completely shown on the BBC. So how did you guys approach it in that way?
Well, we were lucky. Whisper were the independent company that delivered the Euros for us. I think the really interesting thing for us is that the gateway now that people are using and choosing about where they watch. So we're really seeing that people are, accessing via iPlayer, accessing via internet kind of providers is growing. It's really growing, and perhaps about a quarter of the numbers are coming through iPlayer now, not just through linear TV. From a Commonwealth Games point of view, for us, the Commonwealth Games editorially is the most difficult event to deliver, because you've got England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, you've got Isle of Man, and you're serving all of these audiences, and you're trying to serve sports where this is their absolute moment in the sun. Coupled with that, we were working remotely as well. So we had our network and our digital galleries all from Salford this time. So what we had to do was we brought into play an internally developed tool called Silver, which we actually used to stream most of our content, which meant we could use our broadcast galleries for what they were designed for, and we could actually then bring into play our IP gallery, which was simpler and easier to use, but still gave us the editorial control that we need as a public service broadcaster. We can't just put something to line and lead it. So effectively, we did around 210 extra streams to the Commonwealth Games this summer. Most of those were provided by this internally developed product that we call Silver. And I think the most beautiful thing about that, from my point of view as editorial, was how the tech and production came together. And genuinely, it was the most exciting room to be in during the summer because ideas were starting to grow and people were working together. As you saw something that needed to be solved, they go away and solve it and introduce it. And it genuinely was the most creative space I think that I've been in a long time. We're seeing how all of these young people were working together and developing. And, you know, I heard Jamie talk about training and bringing people through. People working together in that way, I think, was just genuinely exciting about what we can do in the future.
And that kind of, I guess, very pressured environment, did it result in kind of new ways of working or tech innovations that you will take going forward from this summer? Or kind of...
Yeah, from our point of view, it definitely will do. It just means we can use the right products in the right place now. You know, you want to use your main broadcast galleries to do your creative and your editorially curated kind of streams, but we also want to be able to provide that depth behind it, and it lets us curate better into iPlayer. We can kind of control it, and I think the development of what we need and how we get that into a tool that fits in with all our systems. You know, being the BBC, it's massive. You know, we can't just take something and fit it in. It almost has to be created to fit into all of our systems. So having that ability to work with, you know, D&E and developing a specific tool for us has just been an absolute game changer.
I'd also say, like, working like closely with the broadcasters and whoever you're with, it's all about now. The one bit, the moment you get with the player or whatever, you want that content to go everywhere. Now there's so many people that want it for the different things, so it's about how quickly and how well. And I think it was an example, probably better than ever. You know, you're always striving to work more closely and link up better with the digital teams and other outlets as well. But it's just finding those ways to just get the content as quickly as possible to all the different people who want to use it for all the different things they want to use it for.
Yeah, and just having the space to think differently. I think that's really crucial for everybody, and I don't think anybody's had that this year. You know, if we could have done one event, then another event, well, one event, then think, then another event, then think, it would have been different, but it was just bang, 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 and you were... But again, that's how things get developed quickly. You know, you've got problems to solve, you solve them, you move on. And I think, you know, COVID and remote working has probably pushed things forward 4 years where we probably would have been otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing. I think we've always talked about this before, but COVID has just pushed all technological processes in broadcasting, 3-4 years in advance, and it's been from that perspective, it's been very impressive to see the amount that us and our competitors and the production companies and broadcasters are kind of really interested in using this new technology. I mean, on the Commonwealth Games, Sunset Vine had 6 multi-channel services running permanently. It was basically like a channel in a box that we put in, and they were producing this content that was going out overnight and playing highlights and things like that. But and you're able to get a lot more content out to people a lot more quickly.
Yeah, that's going to be my next question for you. I mean, as host broadcaster, are you finding you're having to create more variety, I guess, of content coming from it and more streams?
There is that. I mean, I think the other thing about being a host broadcaster is you know, these guys rely on us, so they relied on us. I mean, I should just mention EMG in all of this because they're probably missing from this panel because they were crucial partners of ours, along with Timeline and the other OB partners on the Commonwealth Games, but also on the Women's Euros. But so when you're producing those world feeds, these guys have to rely on those feeds, you know, and I think that's been an area that's challenged everybody. When on the other hand you've got clients who are, you know, budgets aren't infinite, you know, and so how do you create a reliable feed and deliver it to the audience, whether it's in this country or around the world, in a really reliable way? And you know, it was interesting hearing Jamie talking about the sort of the cellular bonded kind of technology that's coming through. That was one of the areas we sort of, and the organising committee at Commonwealth Games worked on, was sort of innovative ways of trying to use that technology, which would never normally be done in a major event, considered too unreliable. But we covered the start of the marathon, you know, on 4G. You know, when our fixed wing RF plane was called back to base because it had a fuel problem at the road race, the cycling road race, our backup was 4G. You know, never. I don't think a cycling road race had been covered on 4G before. I mean, it wasn't perfect, I have to say, but you know, as I'm sure the BBC will testify to. But we still told the story of a race around, you know, the West Midlands, which is incredible. You know, that's never been done before.
Yeah, and so was it kind of a case of the fact being not forced into, but being made to kind of?
I think it's no, not forced, but I just think looking at the new technology and applying it in a sensible way. I mean, I don't think it's, you know, I think it was that particular example with the road race. You know, yeah, we were forced into that. Was our backup or one of our backup plans. That's what we had to revert to. But you know, in a few years, I don't think anyone's going to blink an eye at doing those sorts of events on cellular. It's just gonna be part of what we do. It's going to be very natural, I think.
Yeah. I think it is embracing the problems, isn't it? Because that's when you put things into practice. The same with us. We had to find a solution. We probably weren't 100% sure about using kind of silver for delivery, but actually we had no issues over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of coverage. And it's just having that faith to kind of give it a go and trust in the research and just bring it to life and to start using it now, I think.
And it also brings some creative opportunities as well. So going back to that, so we had onboard cameras on the road race as well, on the bikes. So that they're only going to happen if you're using your mobile network. So that was originally one of the sort of the exciting new innovations. I don't think we were the first, but amongst the first people to start using onboard cameras on a road race, and they carried on working when the RF stopped. So you know, but that's bringing people closer to the action. They're really good, those sorts of devices that again you're using that technology that exists to create a different camera angle or tell a different story or whatever that might be.
I see. And Bethan, over at Whisper, I guess you're receiving these kind of like onboard cameras and things and so on. Are you having to bring in, well, your own technological changes to deal with it?
I mean, for me, it's all about, like, when you're looking at something new, is it going to make an impact on screen, or is it going to change something in the workflow or make something so much more efficient that then you can redirect that resource, be it money or people, back to on screen as well. So everything, I mean, just a little one these guys actually did for us is we really wanted a HIMO camera, a unilateral camera on the Women's Euros, but obviously with the remote and you know, it had to be cost effective. It had to have only take one stream because that was all that was available. You know, it had to be fired remotely and all those. There wasn't quite the right solution there, but there was a camera that could do it, but wasn't sort of integrated, would be fair to say, into the normal workflow. So that's when you hand over to these guys and say, we really want to make this work, but how can we do it? And we did it.
It was a really impressive camera, actually. It was able to do 500 frames per second, and it had the replay engine built into the camera. So you could get the live angle off it, but then you could also take a second output that would do a super slow-mo, and it was replayed from remotely controlled from the VT operation. So they would play it down the second line into their EVS machine, and then they could have those super slow-mos and turn them around within the space of a minute or so. And it had 4 replay banks on it, so you could recall a previous replay if you needed to, and things like that, but also use it as a live camera and not have to take 3 phases and burn all that connectivity, because we only had a limited pipe available on the Women's Euros. So yeah, it was a really innovative camera, and it was kind of the star of the show from the technical perspective.
Yeah, it was, because, you know, like David alluded to, you take the host coverage, and your job, as you know, if you're doing it for a domestic broadcaster like BBC, is to add the bits that make it special for the BBC viewer, and so that camera genuinely did give us something, you know, that we couldn't have got otherwise, and we were really pleased with it.
Yeah, it's really good. We're adapting it further now, building mounts and things, but yeah, it's really cool. Mm-hmm. So.
And well, we've heard a lot about what you did use on the Euros, Commonwealth Games. Going forward, is there anything kind of on your most wanted list in terms of next time? Well, probably not at both at the same time next time, but next time there's a major tournament. What could you bring in which would help technologically wise, do you think?
I think fundamentally, you know, this all pins on connectivity, and whatever we're doing, connectivity is always the limiting factor, or I suppose the deciding factor on the way that we do certain things. And so we've got multiple different solutions depending on what connectivity you've got available, which basically means that, you know, we all talk about 4G and 5G being able to reserve bandwidth, so it's reliable when you've got thousands of people there watching the event. But also, I think just as compression standards and things like that get better, so you can squeeze more into the connectivity you've got, we're going to be able to just deliver so much more. And you know, connectivity is also getting cheaper for 1 gigs and 10 gigs and things like that. So we're able to get a lot more connected venues, and we've been benefiting from that. That's basically how we've managed to deliver a lot of this. And Commonwealth Games relied on a significant amount of connectivity as well, and we did all the encoding and decoding for that. And you know, for us, it's really around how can we utilise that connectivity to get the best value out of the production and be able to show us more content.
Mm-hmm. And well, Victoria, you already mentioned silver. Is there anything kind of at the BBC you're working on? As well?
I think that's the main thing that we're kind of looking at the moment. I think, you know, it's interesting what Jamie said earlier about not liking the phrase OTT. And I think it's similar for us. It's how do we get our content to platforms simply and easily, you know, in a language that all understands. I think it's simplifying that method of distribution, that you can get that content out there effectively, quickly, and, you know, in a way that's not going to break up and affect the audience experience.
I was just going to say as well, it's close to Dave's heart, but like sound on OBs, like now you're more out and about all the time and you're not in the comfort of a studio. I think that is one of the real challenges. Like every day you go to a new venue that has a new challenge and a new set of locations about how you manage the sound, and any little tricks. Like I know that Matt Roberts, one of our execs, is just, what can you get to just improve that experience for the presenters and also then the viewer, the mix and all those things. I think that is like part of being immersed. You then have the challenge of like, how do you make it really good? Like,
I second that. Yeah. Sound. Oh my God, the unsung heroes.
I think from one of the things we're really interested in is the how the augmented graphics on aerial coverage is coming along. I mean, it's really exciting, and you know, you go back, you know, years to the original sort of America's Cup live line, you know, and what went into making that work, and now you're seeing that same type of integration of data and graphics onto drone shots and heli shots in a much more cost-effective way. And that's bringing that sort of storytelling into those big events, you know, and I think, you know, whether it's cycling or marathons or any of those sort of multi-sport type of outside events, which attract so much attention, are so high profile, that's the area we're sort of looking at, how we can bring that kind of extra value and extra sort of storytelling to those shots, and you know, that technology is really interesting.
And of course, once you've got those VR graphics over the top, and you've got all the data inputs, and you've got, whether it be a virtual studio or virtual graphics or whatever, and then you start using, you know, AI technologies and other things like that to throw more data into it, you just end up bringing all this really enriched data back to the audience about how you know, stuff that they just wouldn't even know about before. And I think sailing really was one of the pioneers for it, and it looks really, really good, and you can bring so much more data, and the more that you put into that, the more I think we're going to see some really exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we haven't got too much time, so we'll get on to the audience questions, which we've got plenty of. There's still, if you want to send any in, then go for it. Question a few people have mentioned is that kind of with all this new technology and coupled with a bit of a skill shortage and bringing people in, what do you think, is key for bringing in new engineers and making sure they're also up to date with the latest ways of broadcasting?
I tell you, the new engineers that join are scary clever. They make, every time you bring these people through from graduate programs, and we've got a tech assist program for people who haven't had the same opportunities and those sorts of things. And usually you sort of think, oh, we've got so much to teach them, we know all this stuff, and it takes them about 2 weeks to get across that, and then before you know it, they're like completely reprogramming everything, and you're like trying to slow them down. And for us, it's really about grassroots and trying to bring through these training programs. We've done sort of, I think, 3-4 year intakes of graduate programs, and some of those people are some of our top engineers now. And I think it's the only way you kind of solve that crisis, that shortage. But also not forgetting how adaptable the existing engineers in the industry are, and they've come up with a lot of these technologies, and they've really created a lot of stuff we're using today.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think it's up to us to work together as well. Like we've got to throw the net quite wide, and the only way you get a more diverse workforce as well is like reaching new groups that you haven't talked to before. So everything we try to do, you try to think of ways, like when we have a get involved event, or let's do it with a tech partner, let's do it so that you get to the widest group, and you find a way to show them what it's about, because I think that is the hardest. Lots of young people may not even know the breadth of jobs there are available, and so I think we just have to work really hard to keep trying to make sure people understand the different roles they could go into.
Yeah. And I think there's something there from a production point of view as well, in that you ask the right questions. So often you kind of get names of things in your ears, and when you're trying to plan a production, you ask for that, rather than going to your tech team and saying, this is what I want to achieve, how can I do it? And the more kind of people you can bring into that process of, this is the overall goal, how do we get there? I think that's when you're going to start to see people come through, and you're going to embed those new ways of working as well.
Mm-hmm. I know Sunset and Vine had an initiative with the Commonwealth Games.
Absolutely, and I think that, just picking up on what Bethan said, it's we coordinated it, but we weren't the only people involved in that. It was a lot of partners came together, and what's really pleasing about it is that a lot of people across the industry, not even just in sport, have picked up some of our graduates, for want of a better description, and taken them on, and if anyone here is looking for good quality, talented, people, let us know, because we've got a load of on our books, and that's got to be the thing. It's not just a case of just putting in a scheme and then the end of the games happens and that's it, see you later. We want these people to sort of develop careers, and
you want to see them, don't you, in 5 years?
We
on
do,
another job.
exactly. And that's got to be crucial. So let us know if you have any needs.
Sure, it'll be very popular with people coming up to ask.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think we have time maybe for one more question, very quickly. In terms of sustainability, obviously, huge amount of production had to be done. So, what were the main aspects in terms of making sure it's done in a sustainable way and cutting down emissions and so on?
I mean, I think remote production in itself is the biggest way to reduce your carbon footprint. But then it's also, I think it's about thinking about all the other ways. When you have a UK event, there was, for the BBC, there was no flying. It's just changed people's mindset. It's just rail on, tried to use hybrid cars on everything we did, and I think having those Albert certification and those goals, it just actually helps you right at the beginning of the process, and while sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, there's another thing to do at the startup, but actually when you think about it at the startup, you think about how you're going to address each of your sustainability goals and how you're going to achieve them, and actually it's the only way to change and make, and now crews are used to getting the green memo and seeing what things you're going to do on site, what you're going to ask them. You might ask them to do something that's slightly less easy than it was before, but it's going to have such a positive impact, I think.
I think the big events do help drive that if they have the right attitude from the outset. So the Birmingham Organising Committee was brilliant. They had such a focus on sustainability, which sort of permeated everything, and was it was a requirement, but everyone who was working on it bought into it, and for example, at Leamington Spa, the lawn bowls venue was entirely powered by a solar farm. Now I know you can't put a solar farm in at every rugby or football ground, But it demonstrated, it was a proof of concept, if you like, and we all sort of worked together, and you know, so it wasn't just ROB, but it was the entire venue that was powered by this solar farm. It was amazing, really, which shows that these things can be done if the will is there. Yeah. You know, and it's exciting to see that technology. Now, you know, like I say, you're never going to power every event with a solar farm, but it shows that other sources of power can be used rather than, you know, twin set generators. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean we've got so for the Women's Euros we upgraded the fleet over to HVO plus green diesel, and we've now rolled that out across everything, I believe. So we're trying to do that, and we've also created things like UPS battery trailers that can be, so we can use shore power and then have a generator not running and be able to transition over to it in the event that there was a power outage, and that's still all within the realms of DR and safety and things like that, but without just permanently having a generator running. And I don't think any of that's necessarily different to our competitors, but I think the point is that as an industry, we are having to be held accountable for these actions, and I think it's fantastic. We've got to really push it as hard as we can.
I think accountability is a really crucial one there, both as a broadcaster producing an event, but also holding those producing the events to account as well, because it's such a big buzzword at the moment, and people are pushing the sustainability, but just actually to be questioning where they're getting their metrics from, where they're getting their data from, and just making sure that we're holding everybody to the standards that we're trying to have ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And well, I think I'm about to be held accountable for letting this go on for so thank you all of you for talking about that, and I hope it was very informative for everyone about the summer's sport.